Welcome to another episode of Energy Bytes. I'm Bobby Nealon. You got the rad dad here, John Calfan.
What's up, man? I'm happy you're here.
I know, finally.
Gone through your transition.
Well, let's be careful about what kind of transition we're talking about here.
Okay.
Job transition.
The job transition,
Yeah.
which isn't even like, is still also a deceptive thing because it was just a, it's just a new company name.
Yeah, I was like, oh, today
my domain changed.
Yeah, that. Well, and it didn't, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
But and then Woo Pig Sui, right?
Yeah, buddy. I'm wearing my DMAC shirt today because we somehow squeaked out a win.
Yeah, I went to
Tennessee.
bed and I was like, wait, that happened?
Well, yeah, it's weird. So now my superstition, we didn't watch it. We were at the Fort Bend County Fair. Highly recommend that next year.
Yeah, so you guys went to Zac Top.
Went to Zac Top. That was nuts.
I heard the traffic was insane. It was like 2 hours to get from Needville to Rosenberg.
Yeah, that we were fortunately not on that side of the parking lot, so we didn't have it quite that bad. But there were a ton of people at that tiny fairground, so it was really, really fun, really awesome. We ended up taking the kids down there on Saturday instead of watching the football game, and so now I'm like, well, do I need to just quit watching the games and
probably
we keep winning? And we'll see. I'm very superstitious when it comes to Arkansas football. So.
Sweet, and then. Yeah, I'll let them introduce themselves, but excited to have some of the folks from Spotfire here.
Thank you. My name is Atheer Al-Attar. I'm a principal data scientist now. My background is a mix between petroleum engineering. I had master's from LSU and data science from Georgia Tech. My experience is being in the oil field for the, let's say, kind of like the first part of my career. Now for the last, I guess, 8 years, I've been working with oil and gas, but like the data science aspect of it. I've been in midstream, and I've been with Spotfire for almost, I guess, 3 years. Dealing with all the oil and gas customers.
Thanks for coming on.
All right. My name is Jose Leviaguirre. I am a telecommunications engineering. That's my background, and then I did a master's in computer science. And I've been working with the Spotfire, not with the company, but with the Spotfire itself, for many years, since 2005 or something like that.
Yeah, you got another 10 years on me on that.
Yeah, I mean, on and off, not full time, but it's always a tool that I always admire.
Yeah.
And I worked for Shell for 10 years as a contractor. Then we did. I became a consultant, independent consultant of a Spotfire as well. Then one of my customers hired me, so it makes sense. And then I had the opportunity to move to Chile as a manager of HSE and reporting analytics and assurance. So I had two teams. I didn't know anything about HSE. In my interview, they asked me, do you know about HSE? And I said, no, I don't know nothing. I don't know why I'm interviewing. And they said, but we don't know anything about reporting and analytics.
Okay.
So, but your team knows about HSE, and I think that's a good match. And you don't have to know anything about HSE. You're just going to be managing those teams.
Yeah.
And it was a great opportunity to be an expat in Chile. And then that was during pandemic. That was also during the social unrest.
Okay.
And I mean, it was a good experience overall, and then it was time to come back, and now we're back home.
Very nice.
Houston.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's a fun thing about kind of the data world too, though, is like you learn about all of these other aspects of different businesses, and I think it's a chicken or the egg thing. We talk a lot about, you need the domain knowledge to be an effective professional data scientist or whatever, but at the same time, if you just have that aptitude and willingness to learn, like you can also learn what you need to know about the business. And then if you have those data skills and then are able to apply them to those domains, like it's, that works equally as well. I think it's just that willingness to learn.
Absolutely. That's I think it's hard for anybody in this industry to kind of fail if you have that mentality. That's one of my favorite parts about our industry, generally speaking, is, I mean, there's plenty of egos, don't get me wrong, but if you come in with this willingness to learn and kind of an open mind and not, I know everything because I have this degree or whatever, people will help you, and people are very happy to because they understand the longevity. We need more people in the industry.
Yes, there's. I like to bring a quote from Charles Darwin. I went to a botanical garden not too long ago, and I caught my eye some quote that said, "The species," because it was all these plants and everything. You see how they evolve and how they adapt, and one of the quotes was, "The species that survive is not the strongest or the smartest; is the one that adapts."
Just adaptive.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that was probably my favorite thing about Grayson Mill, like coming in, like, because I'd always done like the data stuff on the subsurface kind of side, but especially with like reservoir engineers. And then when John and I worked at RDS, it was a lot around like the frac side and all that, and I knew that domain pretty well and worked at university lands and got a little bit more exposure, but I never worked land in accounting or any of that. And we came and built a data warehouse, and we pulled a lady on my team who was a reservoir tech. So it made more sense to give her like a lot of that subsurface domain. And then I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm taking land and accounting. Let's figure it out. Let's understand how a GL works. And I got to understand what a division order is, much less like how this whole thing, right. Fits together. But it was, that was probably one of the most gratifying things, just to see how, being at the core of it and seeing how an oil and gas operator operates and just how integral the data working between all these different groups was. So it's a fun profession. I think that's why we're all in here talking about it. So.
Yeah, especially nowadays, it's like it's very important to kind of have this willingness to like learn how other things work. It's like it's no longer the time that you focus on only like one skill.
Yeah.
And because especially like domains like data science in other industries, they're evolving very fast, and I think you can see like this craziness of the Gen AI. And
I was going to say that's like that augments people to the point that can be more like, if you're curious and you want to learn these new things, you can, right? Like, I don't know how I've been in the data side for so long and still never really learned how to write SQL, but I don't know that I have to anymore because GPT can do it really well for me, right? Like, it's a weird thing, but it's also one of those things that's like, as a mechanical engineer, I had no idea I would ever be writing SQL to begin with. So it's this weird, like, augmentation. But I agree with you that, the future businesses are going to rely on employees having a certain, step change in output due to AI tools, digital tools, AI augmentation. And one of the ways that they're going to do that is by making people wear multiple hats and do different things across a business line. So it's going to be very interesting to see how all of that.
There's an interesting saying also, read it somewhere on LinkedIn, that AI will not take your job, but an engineer who uses AI will.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So, I completely agree with that. Right?
I mean,
go ahead.
At this point, we have to be aware that the AI tools are like, most of those tools are called Copilot because they are they are not those drivers. They're not the pilot. They're driving it. So it's just a helping hand. And I also rely that because I do a lot of programming. So if you put like a whole requirement of what you want and the wish list and everything, it's probably gonna tend to hallucinate. Mm-hmm. So you have to be you really need to know what. You really need to know what you are asking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you have to know your stuff in order to ask pieces by piece. Okay, now you do this. Now you do that.
Yeah. So it's way better if you build up.
Exactly.
Especially around development, at least in my experience. But that's another thing I tell people is it's just like, if you're worried about it or you're not getting good answers, force yourself to keep using it. And I promise you will learn, right? Like, I did a talk this summer at SB Oklahoma City on basically what language models are, what they are not, how they work, what they're capable of, all of this stuff, because the general public, I feel like, looks at them and thinks they're in one of two camps. They either think they're magic, right? Like, this is insane and incredible and it can think and understand, or they think, okay, it's like a search tool. Who cares, right? Like, I'll just Google it. But the reality of it is like somewhere in between that, right? And so,
I mean, Google and Bing literally give you the AI,
right.
Answer at the top, and now you get your results. So it's like,
but it's one of those things. It's like, if you force yourself to start using it, like I've been using this IDE called Cursor, which is just a VS Code fork that has AI enablement, and it took me a few weeks of like, okay, I got to force myself to use this. But now it's like, man, I can't imagine not using it, right? Like it's crazy how quickly it can become like part of your daily or weekly workflows once you force yourself to do it. But, just understanding that they're effectively predictive text. And so if you're trying to search for something, and it's all about the context, right? So giving them as much context as possible, giving them the document. That's one thing that like, hey, if you're trying to get it to write an API call for you, give it the API documentation and ask it to write, give it as much context as possible. And it does a much better job. So it's one of those things that you've got to play around with and learn yourself, or you're just going to be kind of scared of it. It almost seems like.
So I think to jump in on some Spotfire stuff, you were saying how fast everything's evolving in like the data space. I want to start there, but even just higher level, I mean, Spotfire is the de facto kind of BI data science, data analytics tool in oil and gas. I mean, like there hasn't been anywhere I've been yet that doesn't have it. But for those who may not be aware, can you kind of give like high level breakdown of, what Spotfire is and like, maybe what kind of differentiates it at a high level, and then we can maybe talk about like what's new and exciting at Spotfire and kind of work back through different use cases and whatever else. But
yeah, I can try. So the way I look at Spotfire, it's a data science platform, or like a hyper converged platform where we try to bring all the steps of data science project in one place. And all the, let's say, personas of all this data science process. So you start by collecting data, or maybe like even before that, by connecting to multiple data sources, and then cleansing the data, visualizing the data, start doing some modeling, maybe like EDA, and then collaborate with other teams, ending with, let's say, reporting your findings and then sharing your reports and everything in between. There are a lot of things also added to that. We have, for example, automation services in Spotfire where you can automate like different tasks. We have alarming platform or alarming extension with Spotfire where you can set up alarms based on say defined parameters. The other thing of Spotfire that I really like is the extensibility, where you can, if you cannot find something off the shelf, you can simply write Python script, R script, or like Iron Python, where you can interact with the product element. I don't know, Jose, if you want.
Yeah, well, I have the definition right here, and that's what we always say in our Dr. Spotfire monthly live meetings. Spotfire is a visual data science platform that makes people smart, that makes smart people smarter by combining advanced analytics and industry-specific visualizations to solve complex business problems. Yeah. So in my own words, or in my history with Spotfire, I've seen that. And I think that's my personal belief, that the Spotfire is ahead of its time. And it's not just a tool, it's a platform. It's a platform that you can extend in so many ways. There are different ways to extend it, and different languages that you can use to extend its capabilities. But I think that Spotfire has always been ahead of its time. And now it's exciting moments because AI is more and more popular. Yep. People are more aware. But data scientists use Spotfire to analyze data. When I say it's ahead of its time, is because many people, especially end users, use it as a reporting tool, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it's like a second nature of a Spotfire to do reports, and people tend to compare that to other tools. Yeah, and it kind of gets frustrating because when you try to push to the limit the capabilities of other tools, you can see that Spotfire just is very natural, can handle millions of data points on a map, for example, and things that we take for granted. The marking, when you create multiple visualizations, you can just click something and immediately you know where it's coming from, and well, you know how it is.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree 100%. And I think that's like, you talk about your frustration, and my frustration kind of boiled over during COVID. And I actually like, cause I think Tableau came out and it's like, oh, we can put multiple layers on a map. And like, and like, I went on a rant on LinkedIn, and ended up getting, like, it was Mark Palmer at the time or whatever, I reached out to me directly. And I was like, why are you not marketing your tool better? Like, I mean, like, you've been doing this since I've touched the product in 2014, probably since 2005. Like, I mean, it's been able to do this, and people are acting this is a revolutionary new thing. And these people have so much market share, but like, you know, I just kind of called out the marketing group and everything. And he's like, man, you really ruffled some feathers. You know, I was like, well, I'm sorry. And it wasn't for lack of, I mean, again, your predecessors like Neil and Rob, like they were doing a great job, like doing like their content and everything like that. But it's just like, it was frustrating for all of us. And I think it's frustrating for a lot of us on the ground floor in oil and gas. Cause if you don't have the right IT department, again, they're just comparing you to Power BI that's free with their E5 license or whatever. Like, and they're not even comparable tools outside of, I can do a pie chart or a tree map or, whatever. Like,
they both have dashboards is basically the comparability.
Right? Like, but like, I can write some pandas in a data pipeline in Power BI, but it's not even close to the same as being able to call a data function and I can create a button. Like, I would almost, I mean, and you can tell me where I'm wrong here, but I would compare Spotfire more to like a Shiny or a Streamlit on steroids, because like it makes it so much easier to do those things.
Yeah,
like
it takes it beyond just a basic BI. If you want a basic BI dashboard, sure, there could be other tools there, but that's one of the things I think why Spotfire is such a staple in oil and gas specifically, is because we have so much ridiculous large time series, I'll put that in quotes. We have a lot of large time series data sets, and it's very hard to visualize thousands of points or millions of points and, across days, weeks, months, whatever. Tools like Power BI are terrible at doing those things because they're BI tools. They're not intelligence tools in that aspect. Right. And so just like because I went from Spotfire to Power BI, and there were all these things where it's like,
well, I can't do that.
I can't do that. And so it was like going backwards. It was like going from, my current gaming laptop to the laptop I had in college 15 years ago. Lord. And so it's like, that's a whole nother, they kind of can do the same thing, but one is way better at doing a lot more things than the other one.
Yeah, I've been, so before I joined Spotfire, I've been a customer or like a user. From a user perspective, the way I look at it is, if you are an engineer or if your task is kind of like an engineering based task, I don't think you can do it any better than, with anything else other than Spotfire. If you're doing, I don't know, simple reporting or like a simple visualization, then you can do it with other tools. But once, let's say, the task gets complicated or like intelligent, as you said, I think tools like Spotfire provides you with a lot of functionalities, especially just like the Jose mentioned, the interactivity, or like the brush linking, they call it, between multiple elements, where you can, for example, select something from a table and then you get it highlighted on a map, or maybe like bring something, or like, that will trigger a data function that will bring something else from an API data point or so. So it's that like chaining or
lots of layers on a map.
Exactly.
Well, the big thing is like, anytime I hear something, it's like, it's the GIS. I mean, like that. And you guys are so far ahead on the GIS side, in that space. Like, it's just, even if, again, if anyone who has to use it, like, it's like, I can't do that. Like in these other tools, like, oh great, you have an Esri extension that's terrible, and I need a GIS professional to expose it. But even again, we could probably go on and on about different use cases like Extensibility. But I think I've got a Medium article about there where when I was at University of Lands, they didn't want to use an SDE, and our GIS guy was big on web feature services like WFS. And it's like, well, I didn't have that connector natively, but go find an R script, plop it in, and I was able to connect to those, bring it in, and now you've got a connector. So if you don't have a connector, you've got a connector, because you have the full Python library at your disposal. You have pretty much the whole R, it's slightly different because you guys are, doing a little bit different with tear versus, but you can still do vanilla R as well, right?
Even just the built-in stuff, right? Like that was the first time I did a regression analysis was because Spotfire had it built in, and it made it incredibly easy for me to do.
Regression,
right?
clustering, and all
just
those
some
things.
of these basic analytical functions where it's like, I know what these are, but I don't have the time to go write a full script to do this because I don't even know what I need to be doing it on, right? So being able to explore the data before you start narrowing in on certain things, it just makes it so easy. And it's really, really great when you have a ton of data, right? Being able to visualize, like millions of data points on a map or millions of data points on a frac job or a drilling rig or all of this stuff. And some of these other tools, when you put something like that in Power BI, it either doesn't work or you're limited to like a 15-minute window that you have to slide the entire thing across, or you have to write your own Python dashboard. And it's like, this is a dashboarding tool. Like that's the point of this.
Yeah.
And even when it comes to streaming data, you can, for example, bundle products like Spotfire streaming. We have one of the use cases that data comes directly from the well pad, and you can do like on-the-fly analysis or like cleansing, and then you hook that up in Spotfire. Very simple. And then you can use mods or like Spotfire native visualizations to kind of look at live operations.
So let's get Jose to talk about some of that, like the JavaScripty side, like mods and like even just a text area. Because I mean, that's one of the most powerful things too. I mean, that's enabled multiple companies to literally build and sell startups off of it. I mean, like Q Engineering, utilize the hell out of text areas and all that kind of stuff. But then we're still able to give people some native functionality that felt good in their hands. But let's talk about kind of that side of it.
Sure. So the texts are very powerful. Are like a mini web page that you can use to put some documentation, but it has also the power of scripting, JavaScript, which are web technologies. And then all you have to do is write your own code and do the magic with the text areas. Many of that code is already available out there. So you can just copy and paste the code and that's it. You have to just copy and paste some of that code and you're ready to go. You can have pop-ups or sliders. You can beautify that experience, that analytical experience to make it to maybe get more real estate, and you can hide stuff, panels, control, filters. So that's the power of the text areas that you can do that. And mods, for example, that's also very powerful because you can extend also with JavaScript technologies custom visualizations. So let's say you need a specific visualization very specific to the industry, then you can program that visualization. But you don't have to know programming because there are many other mods or visualization mods available out there through the exchange, through the community, that you can just download. For example, the
well log mod. Yeah, we've been doing a lot of energy specific mods. We recently released an enhanced version of the well log mod where you can create multiple tracks, add multiple curves. You can also create a categorical track where you can, for example, highlight the geology or the formation. And then we also released the gun barrel mod.
That's right. Yeah, that's the one you were talking about. Energy Forum, right?
Yes.
Was it Chevron was working with you guys on that, or one of the?
I think Chevron.
Yeah.
I think so. And then there is the combined 3D log, which is shows the formation tops and the well trajectories within each formation with all the color coding, that if a trajectory falls within a specific formation, then it will be colored with that color. And also there is the well schematic log.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and you can also with that, I think you can show how, for example, a cementing batch moves, and then it will kind of like, you can see like when it gets to kind of an hour section, it will move faster.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So we've been using a lot of industry specific.
So real quick, I just want to give kudos on the gun barrel thing, because I think everyone across the industry is you've always had to start with just moving around circles on a PowerPoint, and that's exactly miserable. But I've probably also coded my own gun barrel solution at Conoco and
So that's the story
GME and all. Like, I
everywhere.
mean, everywhere. And one thing I hate more than anything is a bunch of really smart people in the industry replicating efforts.
The same thing.
Like, if someone is everyone's like, just share it. That doesn't produce more
Right.
oil.
Right.
Like,
right. That's
but
not
like,
a
but again,
competitive
we don't
advantage.
need multiple people making $200,000 a year working on the same thing. Like let's just like, you do it once, do it right. And then again, if it's some pseudo open source, then we can collaborate if we need to enhance it or, I think there's certain things, yes, like they're proprietary, whatever, but like there's other things. It's like, why are we fighting this right now? But two, like, can you guys kind of dive deep, talk a little bit? I think it's a good segue into about kind of how the structure at Spotfire has changed, because now it's just Spotfire. It's not TIBCO Spotfire, right? Because you're your own business unit. And then specific to energy industry, how you guys are really leaning into that, because I mean, again, you mentioned like you have now energy specific mods. And I think even maybe on the data science side, I don't know if there's certain models and stuff that you guys have done, but it seemed like you're really leaning into like, helping push the industry forward on those things.
Yeah, so TIBCO was Spotfire was acquired by TIBCO in 2007, something like that, and then TIBCO was acquired by Vista Equity Partners in 2014 or something like that. I don't remember when, and ever since it's been evolving. It stayed stable for a long period of time with TIBCO products, but there were everywhere. There are different products from TIBCO, and Spotfire was one of those products. And then Vista Equity Partners bought Citrix, and it became and TIBCO became like a new organization. That was in 2022 when it became Cloud Software Group. So our CEO Tom Krause split it into different business units. We have Spotfire as an independent business unit, and then TIBCO is another independent business unit, and Citrix also is a business unit, and that give us more independence, more freedoms, and be more agile in that regard. So it's good to be. I mean, we're still settling because this was so recent.
Sure.
But we're very excited and very looking forward what's coming next.
Yeah, 'cause it even sound like at the Energy Forum, some of the OG Spotfire, people were coming back. People that had been there in maybe the 2010s. They're like, I think one thing is like it's almost got a cult following. Like people love Spotfire. I just think at some level, if they moved out of the industry or different directions, or the IT department told them otherwise, that maybe like they got pulled away from it, but they all want a piece of it. Like they love the product.
I was going to say, if it's hard once you use it and then you try to use something else and you're like, oh, this is a lot crappier. Or it's like, the way that they go about like bins, for example. I remember trying to figure out how to do bins on Power BI. Like the way that this is set up is so dumb compared to how easy it is to do in Spotfire. Just like the native, like the navigation of the UI, right? Like they do the exact same thing, functional or to the user. I can bin this data however I want, but how many steps it takes, like those are the things, especially when you're a daily user of tools, those are the things that add up and you just get like worn out by. Even if you know exactly what the flow is, it's like if it takes me 5 more clicks to do it over here, every single time I have to do this thing, that's really obnoxious. Or like, some of the, again, most of the time I'm using BI tools, generally speaking, I'm using them for kind of time series data stuff, and like, doing that in Power BI is not fun.
We also need to remember that the origin of Spotfire, it was part of a research in the University of Maryland. With Ben Snyder. He created this tool. It was basically scatterplot. The very first version of the Spotfire, it was a scatterplot, but it evolved. So Spotfire has always been visualization and data science tool or platform. Over the years, it became a platform. So we're not a marketing company or a UX company. We're basically the core of the business is driven by the data science team and all the interaction that we have with the customers. So we want this, we want that. We listen to the customer through the Dr. Spotfire program, and then we give that information back to the product team, to the data science team, and all that feedback from our customers evolve into maybe a new visualization, more data functions, article use cases, accelerators, things like that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the other BI tools they almost try to safeguard the user to an extent, right? Like, Power BI defaults a date or a date timestamp to a categorization or categorized date instead of just a continuous date. And it's like, but those are my only two options, right? And so it's like little things like that where it's like, as a analyst, I want more control over how I visualize this, how this is laid out. And you don't have those knobs unless you want to really get under the hood with some of these other tools, or they just don't exist at all, right? Especially, I was thinking about it while you were talking, like oil and gas is very unique in the fact that you have all these different literal layers of data, right? You've got subsurface, which has well schematics and surveys and logs and all this other stuff. Then you've got all the surface data. You've got the GIS data on top of the surface data. You got the real-time operations. Like, we have a very lots of data
formats
coming
also.
from all kinds of different formats, right? So it's like I said, it's one of those things. Once you use it and you understand how to use it, it's very hard to go use something else because most things are inferior.
And to talk about, like, to your point that like this has been for data scientists probably before data scientist was even like a broad term. Because I mean, like, what 2012 was like the Time magazine data's sexiest job, and like I came into the industry at 2014. But like even when I started, like there were actually some Spotfire developers we had at Conoco that were using S+. And for a lot of people that don't know, S+ was the language that actually is what R was born out of. So I mean, you guys were utilizing, the precursor languages to what everyone's using now in like data science. And even like, and again, I imagine you probably still can use S+ if you wanted. I'm not sure if it's supported anymore.
I think you can. I mean, for R for sure. I mean, you can still
R obviously
use R inside Spotfire. But let's say my point of view, I started seeing, like, once we released the support for Python, I think that was, I don't know,
back a couple of years back.
Yeah, a lot of users, they started like moving to Python. Away from R.
I think, and you guys, I think in the most recent release, at least with maybe Spotfire 14, I think it became even much easier to deploy those to like the web service too. Like, cause you used to need to have like those spot statistic services, and it was kind of hard, but like it became, and from what I could tell, pretty trivial to, move like those libraries to the.
And the data canvas also has been evolving a lot. So now you can basically look at the function, change the parameters, like, move back and forth between tables, like input tables and output tables, and then look at the script, everything from the data canvas.
You can see like kind of the whole lineage
exactly, and then
through the project.
The Python engine, I think it's been, I mean, the speed of the execution has been enhanced.
So do you have is it its own? Because I know like Atheer is its own kind of enhanced engine. Like, is your Python engine enhanced, or is it using
yes.
okay?
Yeah.
Got a really random question. And you guys may not even know the answer, but what like portion of Spotfire users, how does it break down cloud versus like on-prem or self-hosted, self-managed? This is just a complete random question.
I don't know the answer for that, but I have a feeling that it's more, it's not cloud, but on-prem. On-prem because of many reasons. Yeah. I mean, the data might be on cloud, but and maybe also the server, but it's more in prem. It's more because the Spotfire is more enterprise ready, and the cloud I feel is more like you to get started and things like that.
And some of the companies, they have their own their own Python packages, and then they don't want to say kind of publish that. So I mean, I've seen I've never seen a use case where there's like a large user base. They use the clouds. Everything goes on prem.
No, that makes sense.
That'll give them a lot of control, especially like when it comes to version control for their code, and like to use specific libraries from PyPy.
No, I always like to see
on the server.
I always like to see how where the industry is at as far as how comfortable they are with cloud versus on-prem and stuff. So,
but again, in some of it, I mean, it's not a knock, but like it just and I think it's gotten better, like more parity,
Yeah,
but
for
for a
sure.
while, like cloud was not a one-to-one to what was available to on-prem. Like, I mean, like the feature set and everything. And like you said, like when you guys upgrade in the SaaS product, you're getting moved, because this is where we're at, whereas like if we want to be on 14.0 LTS, just, we can feel comfortable that anything that moves is not going to break. So, you talked about the mods and you have like the library and stuff for that, but can you talk more about like, I'm struggling to remember like the exact name, but you have like a data science library of like the different scripts and everything.
Yeah. So we have our Exchange, which has, you can download mods, you can download data functions. We recently started releasing a Python library called DSML, Data Science Machine Learning. And then this library has, I think, around like 180 functions in all the areas of machine learning and data science: cleansing, smoothing, modeling, time series,
like random forest and all those different things.
Exactly. Right? So you don't need to kind of like write a function inside your data function. You basically just call that DSML library and then use like whatever data functions within that. So
and I mean, Python. So like you would install that Python DSML library in like your
in your server deployment, and I'm not sure if it will come like pre-deployed. Probably it will come pre-deployed in the next version.
That's pip installable.
Yeah.
So I mean, like now like an ADD, like, but like if
we're
I was
going
working,
down the rabbit hole,
if I was working in say VS Code, I could leverage that potentially.
Yeah. It's a PyPy library. You can use it.
So if I feed it a pandas data frame, it can do all the things.
Yeah, exactly. But instead of, let's say, writing a long code, I mean, you can just simply, for example, if you have a missing data issue, and then you want to do like imputing based on regression or like based on mean imputing or so, you can simply just call it data frame identifier, like give it the column that has the missing data, and then it will do the rest for you. So it will save you, like, it will shorten your code.
Again, like why are we doing
data function?
Why are we writing? If this is a solved problem, why are we recreating the wheel?
Yeah.
One of the nice features about Spotfire is the data functions.
Yeah,
data functions are super powerful because it builds a lot of the UI for you. You don't have to do anything of that. You just put the code there. If you find it somewhere else, or even the we didn't talk about the Copilot extensions.
I wanted to get into that for sure.
Yeah. Well, maybe it can generate that for you, and then all you have to do is define the parameters, and sometimes you don't even have to do that, and then define the output, what you want. You want a new data table, a new column, and then you have your data right there. The action mods, that's another thing. That's a nice thing that came up in recent version of the Spotfire, that you can automate things in a contained format. So you can also download, just like you do with data functions or mods, you can also download predefined actions. And maybe you want to write back to database, or maybe you want to automate some feature. For example, is basically a wrapper around IronPython. So many of the things that you can do with IronPython, you can do now in an automated way. So you have your action, you define again your parameters, and let's say when you maximize your window, you want to also maximize the table, because if you have a big screen and you maximize, all the visualization will maximize, but not the data table. So maybe you want to go to that manual process of resizing the columns. Well, you can automate that with just a click.
Nice.
And for example, if you have, or like if you're looking at a frag job, and then you saw an anomaly, and then you want to kind of like create a quick report of that with a screenshot of that chart, maybe the name of the well, the time, and everything, and then export as a PDF, and then share it with the team. You can bundle all of that in an action mod, and then add that as like a simple button on the chart.
That's pretty
awesome. That, and we'll do all these steps for you. And then
that's
nice
these are like
way of
these are the UI like touches that I'm talking, the interface, the interaction touches that I'm talking about, and these are the things that like truly separate like an okay product from a great product, right? Because I mean, everyone does these, right? Writing back and forth, changing resolution based off the screen and all this stuff, and so it's just like I love tools where we codify a lot of the simple repetitive things so you don't have to do that every single time, but then you still have control to do everything else that you want, and you're not just crammed into this low code box that you can't get out of. I think that's where like there's a lot of opinions on like the low code stuff, but in my opinion, the best use of low code is something like this, where it's like standard, repeatable, everyone does it. We don't need to reinvent the wheel every single time, but you still have extensibility and control around everything else that you want to do with it.
Yeah, if you want to modify it, you want to change it.
Because even like you mentioned writing back to the database, and I hadn't even thought about that, but I mean, I've forced it, through in our data functions, but now, like you said, like the action mods make that a lot cleaner. Because I remember and you guys both have a ton of videos. So if you guys, are listening to this and you want to, see and hear more from these guys, they have a lot of really good content.
Plug it, right?
Yeah, is it Dr. Spotfire?
Dr. Spotfire, just look it up.
It's on YouTube, and
it's on YouTube. Yeah,
awesome. But I think you have one of those about like the writing back to the database. Because is it even like, can you do it like on a cell by cell basis? Like, you could go into like a cell, edit a cell and write it back? I don't want to overpromise and deliver, but like, I know there was one where I think it was something similar to that where.
Yeah, there was a use case where you click on a cell and then it will open a little pop-up window where you can change that value and then write it back to the database. Or maybe you want to make a selection of, okay, these are outliers, or I have to put a comment on these records. You hit a button and then writes back into the database and tags that with maybe your username or some additional comments for those records back in the database, back in the source.
Yeah, the thing is like with the data function is they're all like everything can be parameterized.
Yeah.
So, and then that parameterization can come from a document property or like a highlight or a marking. It's like up to you. How do you design your logic? So for example, if you want to just click on something on a table and then click an action mod, it will write that back to like a database. Or it just, the possibilities are endless. It just depends on how you design it.
Again, it's like, hey, we've parameterized some things to make it nice and easy.
I'm a big fan of
you can customize it around beyond that. That's the optimal thing, I feel like, for most people, right? Because in most of these scenarios, you have, I use the word like citizen data scientists, right? Engineers that aren't necessarily data scientists, or people that aren't doing
I don't want
a lot of code
someone to define something for me.
Right. And so like being able to understand what it is, like click into it, look at the formula, that's good for most people, right? Just like we're so ingrained in understanding all the bounding conditions.
There's also something to remember. Sometimes when you want to add an extension or some other plugin into your software or tool, you will have to go through these corporate process and tailgates and everything. Here it's just like a file. It's like, who's going to stop you for loading an Excel file into Spotfire? Yeah. The same principle is with the custom visualizations. Who's going to prevent you to add a new visualization? You don't have to go to I3 to all that process or go to all those approvals. And that was one of the use cases. One of our customers, he was like, but it's actually, they didn't come to us. They came. That was a story of one of customers that said he saw what they were doing in the Spotfire. He said, "Wow, that's amazing. How do I get that into my machine?" Oh, yeah, here's the file. Just load it. I don't have to go to IT edit. No, just right now you can start using it.
Yeah, because even like say earlier, I brought up say like Streamlit or Shiny or something like that. But like even those, especially in a bigger like you'd be lucky if they let you install Python or even the version of Python you want, or to even like fight with to wrestle with those kind of things. So and again, it's just even those, then you have to be much more of a code forward person to and then probably take even more time, even if you were good at the code to, that time to value is always a huge deal.
Yeah. It's designed to be a self-service analytical visual data science platform.
Talking about the automation and parameterization, we recently added a couple of functionalities to our automation services. So now you can, they added this feature called for each, where you can basically loop over and create multiple, or like execute multiple tasks. Mm-hmm. So I've been using, before I joined Spotfire, I've been using the automation services a lot to generate PDF reports. And then the use case that I was really struggling with, if you have, let's say, a list of 100 employees, but those employees are like divided into 5 groups, and then you want to loop through all of these emails. But for example, the first group, you want to send them report A, send group report B, and each report. So like each report is different from the other one. With the for each, you can basically do that with 3 steps. You basically just parameterize. You just point it to the table that has all these emails, right. And then the second table is basically the report templates. For example, 5 templates or so, and then that's it. And then just
a mapping exercise.
Yeah, just a mapping exercise. So that's like the power of parameterization.
And I think that's another one of the things to highlight. And I think it's a blessing and a curse because it can be really confusing for people that step into projects that they're not aware. But like, is the data limiting options you have? Because I mean, you have filters and you have filtering schemes. You have markings and different marking schemes, but then you have data limiting by expression, but all these things. But having all those levers, I mean, the possibilities are endless. Right. So I mean, if you're intentional about how you build them out, I mean, because I think again, one of the coolest, but probably most dangerous one is create details visualization. And all of a sudden people have like 80 different, marking schemes in their tools. But like, I mean, makes a power user or not a power user pretty dangerous quickly. Where like, oh, I've got this bar chart, and then all of a sudden I can see the details of that, or I can, because if you didn't know what you're doing, but you knew what a details visualization, you could create 3 things, and all of a sudden you could drill from this pie to these bars to this answer, in 3 clicks.
Yeah, no, it's super.
But again, but understanding kind of how those all work, and I filtered here and it didn't work on this page. Well, yeah, it's a different filtering scheme. But again, I think it is one of those where, like, to your point, maybe it has something for everyone at wherever they're at. Like,
there's a new feature that also came in a couple of versions ago, so you can visualize where your markings are being applied, and maybe you have orphan markings because it's a lot of times you have to figure out what marking is this being used, and then you can just simply remove them and click them. You can know exactly where it's being applied.
Oh, nice.
I want to hear more about the Copilot.
Yeah,
as the LLM guy.
Yeah. So the Copilot is basically an LLM agent inside Spotfire now.
An extension, yeah.
You can install it as an SPK extension.
And that shows up in any DXP that I open?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I do have to install it for each different project I open, or
no, you just install it one on the server
once, and then anytime I open it, it's available as a code.
Yeah, it's going to ask you if you want to update the client when you connect to the server, and then you say yes, and then you get it.
Like, and then it has a couple of I think like to the moment, I think it has 6 intents, or like say 6 main tasks. You can basically ask a how-to question. So that will, for example, how to bring a mod to Spotfire. It will give you all the steps.
Yep.
And then, as we talked, it will bring all the citations below, so where this information is coming from. You can ask, let's say, a data-related question, like data integration question. So, for example, in table A, what was the, let's say, average gamma ray reading in this depth? Or like from depth A to depth B, what was my average porosity reading? Or, for example, you can ask general questions like, what should I look for in my data? And it will give you like a whole summary for your table, explaining all the trends, any, let's say, unexpected observations, any basic understanding from. So, for example, I noticed that the Copilot is able to recognize when I write GR, it was able to recognize that this is a gamma ray. Or, for example, when one of the things that you can also ask is generating data functions, which I think is like the most helpful
100%
feature, because a lot of people hesitant when it comes to writing data functions in Spotfire.
Yeah.
But writing data functions through the Copilot, basically it will add the data function within the data function. So it will not give you the code only. It will add that for you.
Yeah.
The only step left is for you just to map that to map the input and output basically to like your real input and output.
That's awesome.
And we'll give you like the the function with all, let's say, the commenting, all the description for the variables and everything.
And uses the actual parameters from your data set and not just a generic.
No. Yeah.
name.
Well, yeah, basically, yeah. And then I was testing, for example, write a data function to smooth the GR from this table and calculate VSH, which is the V shell. And then, yeah, to my surprise, the Copilot was able to figure out the formula of the VSH, and then added that and with all the commenting. And the function ran. I mean, there are basically only two steps after the function is run. You need to trust the function,
Right.
and then map the variables to like your real variables, and then it will run. I've done some testing also with kind of more complex use cases, like reading data from a DLIS file. It's like a binary. It's not like an ASCII, like the last file. And it was able to generate the function, I would say 95%.
Yeah.
I just needed to change 1 or 2 lines, but the rest of the function was able to generate that, and I was able to extract, I think it was the VDL curve.
No, I think that's it's funny because if you talked to someone that was really into the data science side or the ML side, they'd say, well, 95% is not good enough, right? But then
That's
my
why
argument,
it's Copilot.
right? Well,
Yeah.
exactly. But like that's my argument for these things. Is it's like if I can get 95% of the way there in 5 minutes or less, the amount of output, the speed at which I'm going to be able to do things is just tremendous.
Yeah, I don't write PowerShell, but like if I want to do some simple thing on top of a file system in Windows, like PowerShell is the best tool for the job.
Yeah.
So just write it for me, and I know coding enough to read it and like that fits. Yeah, that looks right. And then boom, it runs, and like in 2 minutes I did something that would have taken me 20-30 minutes to hack away at, if not more. Like
I mean, that's the thing is it's like people think that this is like some new kind of way of doing this, but it's like I can't tell you how many Stack Overflow forum threads that I stole code from and then modified to fit my use case before LLMs came out. It's the exact same thing. It is the exact same thing. Give me a starting point that is well understood, and then I can modify it as a pseudo user or whatever to make it work for my use case. And it's like there's all these instances across tech where that happens, and it works really, really well, right? Like there's a trading platform that I use for stocks and Bitcoin and stuff called TradingView. They have an editor called Pine Editor, and it's just like a little Python editor. And there's a marketplace, and people put their scripts out there, and I can go in there and copy the script and edit it to however I want, and it's great. It's I am curious though. You mentioned something, so it obviously has access to the underlying data and stuff, but it sounds like it also understands the data tables and the structures and the schema and everything.
It can also generate charts for you.
Do aggregations and all the
and explain charts.
Explain charts. So explain. You can give it the name of the chart, and it will.
That's awesome.
Kind of like tell you a summary about the trends in the charts, observations, and then you can also they have this feature called topics or modes, which basically is switching to a different index. So let's say you're an oil and gas company, and then you have an index only for your leases and contracts, and then another index maybe for like your reservoir engineering team, and you want to ask something about or like something contract related. You can simply switch to that index, ask a question, and then go back to like the main index.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's really cool. That's I think that's kind of the next big, or one of the big next kind of iterations on the language model front is it's a universal problem. Everyone wants to say, hey, language model, give me this aggregation in this SQL table or whatever table, and language models are language, not numbers. And so they can do math, they understand equations, and they're getting better at it by the day. But it's such a weird thing because they understand SQL, like they understand how to write the code. You just have to connect. So I very much so believe that in the next 6, 12, 18 months, whatever it is, there will be kind of another groundbreaking step change in how language models are able to interact with traditional structured data. It's weird because, right? Like you've got this cool, sexy thing, but it's really mostly good at unstructured, PDFs, text data. Whereas historically we've always wanted really good structured, clean data. And so, but you can see where there's going to be a convergence of them at some point, and then that's going to be crazier.
I've been seeing. I went to the digitalization in oil and gas event here in Houston. I've seen an interesting use case about using LLM to extract information from HSE documents also, and they were kind of like using that so whenever you want to, let's say, create a new HSE document, it will try to help you to like list the requirements for an HSE job, or what do you need like to kind of like perform this job.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things we're doing on the enterprise side is, you're paying people 6 figures to go write the same 98% procedure for this. The procedure is literally 98% the exact same text, the exact same format. And that's what language models are really good at, the same repetitive things. So it's like this natural evolution of like, hey, why the hell are we paying these people to do this stuff that they don't even like doing and they hate doing anyway? Hey, this makes a lot of sense, right? So no, I'm super bullish on the LLM stuff, and it makes me excited that it's slowly starting to seep into the data side of it, because you can really see like, man, this is going to be some powerful stuff as these things converge. And it's one of the one of the questions that pretty much every single person asks on the enterprise side. They're like, so we've got all this IoT data or this SCADA data. We want to be able to ask, what can I do to fix to increase my pump hours? And I'm like, that is not going to give you a good answer today. Like, that's not what this is for.
All data need to be indexed in it.
Right. That's the machine
learning. And also the other thing of it is domain knowledge should always be there.
Yeah.
And it should always be coupled, or like at least used to validate what you get out of the LLM.
Sure.
Like using the LLM output like without any domain knowledge is very dangerous.
Yeah, 100%. You can't. That's the thing. Use them, but don't give them 100% of your trust but verify. Trust but verify, 100%.
Yeah, because the LLM cannot go to jail if they get started.
No, and we've talked about that before, though. Just like as AI progresses, and if more things are automated or cars drive themselves, like then where does that liability?
Yeah, that's
sit. Like where's who needs insurance? The person that's sitting in the car, or the company whose model is driving the car? It'll be an interesting legal landscape in the next.
I really am not looking forward to the software world overtaking the auto industry, but it seems like that is kind of inevitable at this point. I don't get it because of the whole right to own, right to repair, I think is the law or whatever. But like, how are you going to charge me? I saw a Hummer commercial, and it was a really good commercial. And then right at the end, it was like, free. I forgot what GM's Blue Cruise, I think, is their GM's self-driving stuff for 3 years. And then there was like this big disclaimer at the bottom, and so they get a free trial for 3 years. And if you want it after 3 years, you got to subscribe to it. And it's just like, man, this is going to be terrible. They're going to make heated and cooled seats. Or I think Volvo did that.
I heard that was BMW.
It was BMW or Volvo.
You need to subscribe to heat your seat. It's ridiculous.
Like, no, man, that's not how this works. It's my car.
Exactly. It's like taking a basic thing and then make it
it's like subscribe for your microwave to work at home.
Exactly.
No, it's my microwave. I bought it. I own it.
Yeah.
So before we get, kind of towards the end, I think I'm just kind of curious, like whether it's, again, you've both been using it as customers, and now you're obviously like, probably been part of a lot of projects at Spotfire, but what's like a project that you worked on or that you've seen that's kind of like near and dear to your heart, or something that was like maybe one of your favorite projects, that just kind of comes to you, like you're like, man, that was pretty cool.
Cool use cases are another one. Like that's my big thing is we don't talk enough as an industry, but we also don't share like the cool, even you don't have to tell me how you did it, but just talk about what you were doing, right? Like we use the data from this in this way, which no one else is doing.
And it led to this outcome.
Right? Like,
I worked on a project. Let's say the main theme of the project is using a technique called dynamic time warping. Dynamic time warping basically is a way to compare two sequences. So those two sequences can be time series or can be log data indexed by depth. And then the use case was you have a bunch of wells already drilled, and then you're trying to add a new well, or like you are currently drilling a new well, and then you want to use the existing knowledge from these wells to hopefully, let's say, increase your rate of penetration on this well, or at least like to kind of like use the best practices from the past. So the dynamic time warping, what it does is it basically tells you according to a pre-selected parameters. For example, like if you choose, let's say, the gamma ray or like any other indicator from this well, and then you compare it with the existing wells, it will tell you like which one is the most similar one to use, and then you will kind of like let's say you can consider that well as kind of like a twin to this well, so you can basically model the ROP using these like historical data, and then use that model to kind of like predict when you will hit the reservoir on this existing well. The nice thing is with Spotfire is we were provided with a lot of flexibility to kind of like quickly select, okay, I don't want to, let's say, go by the gamma ray. I want to go maybe by another indicator. So you can quickly select that, and you can also quickly change your clustering size. So for example, I want to look at let's say the 3 closest wells, or like the 4 closest wells. And then we were also looking at things like, so for example, let's say in this area, we found out that the flow rate is the main factor that affects the ROP. But does that change as you like move in the reservoir? So coupling the mapping and then all these like data functions that you trigger when you select something, so made it very easy to kind of like try different scenarios.
Right.
Yeah, this was a very close to my heart.
No, that's a really cool use case, and it makes a ton of sense, right?
And
like, I think that's one of our biggest problems is we do so much, but we're not very good at taking the learnings of the past and applying them for actual things that we're doing in the future or today, right? It's like we document these things, or we have all this data, but half the time the data is junk, or it's not structured, or it needs to be cleaned, or whatever. But it's like once you do have it,
and then that's like the
things that you can do, right?
Yeah. So I mean, with all these previous wells, you have like hundreds of DDRs, and these DDRs like definitely have a lot of, let's say, issues they faced, or like problems, and then what did they do to solve these problems? So harvesting all this knowledge and then kind of employing that in your, let's say, current operations, that's like a direct line to revenue, cost saving.
Yeah, it's not just about harvesting knowledge, but also data that can become knowledge. Because with all that information, then with the LLM principles, you can just turn that data into knowledge. And they say that data is the new oil for good reason.
Yeah, no, you can. I mean, that's the thing. I think people, when you frame, especially operational data, right? Whether it's SCADA or frac or drilling or flowback, whatever, it's literally the system telling you what is happening. Whether that fits your hypothesis on what was going to happen or not is a whole nother story, but it's telling you something, right? Like, I know Bobby knows exactly what I'm thinking about right now because of when we worked together, the downhole gauge story. But this, Bobby and I have seen it. We did this long-term well test. We had 2 independent gauges. They both, the client did not agree with the data. It was like a 6-month downhole bottom hole pressure gauge. They didn't agree with the data, but we had 2 redundant gauges that we then sent off to be certified and recalibrated and make sure everything was good. Completely cleared by the manufacturer that everything was good, but because it didn't fit what they thought was supposed to be happening, it was bad data. Not the data is telling you what is happening, and we need to change our hypothesis.
And that's always one of my big things, like data science. Like, you have a hypothesis, you are testing it, and if it may not.
Right. Well, that's why
oftentimes if you're doing real science, it probably won't fit your hypothesis.
I think it was humble. It was one of the I think it was Friedman, one of the economists, said something to the effect of, you've only just proven a way not to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't ever prove something flat out. You just prove all the different ways that don't work.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like,
And that itself can be like, let's say, a valuable information.
Yeah.
I remember my supervisor at the master's time, and when I started like my research, and then he said, look, by the end of the research, like what you're doing might not work, and that's still a valid information to provide, like say, to the next one who will do the research, so to avoid that path.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the key things also Spotfire has to offer when you distinguish between analytics and reporting, because reporting will give you answers to your question. You have a question, you pull the data, and okay, that's the answer. But when you're doing data analysis, you just get all the data, you start slicing and dicing all the data. You play with the x-axis, y-axis. Let's see how this other one correlates with this other one.
Log scale, not like all these.
And then you see all these things, and then you have even more questions.
Right.
Questions that you never.
Yeah. Let the data drive.
Yeah.
They will drive the questions.
Yeah.
And any projects that have been near and dear to you, or anything that comes to mind?
Well, I remember a project that was about getting pi data.
Okay. OSI pi, like
OSI pi, and they wanted to write back to the database.
Okay.
And as easy as just selecting records, putting comments, and that was a good project that I was involved with.
The thing that you did with the map charts, where you bring scan, that was cool.
That's another one. Yeah. So the map charts, you not only can use TMS layers or different maps, different geographies, you can also put your own images. So this company was using these templates that are standard.
They have like a curve scanned from a textbook, or like from
exactly
an API document or something, and they want to kind of like project their points.
So they want, because the map chart is like a scatter plot, and they want to put those data points into that, overlay that image behind it. So you provide the data, you created a data function to you define what your because your image have XY coordinates. Yeah, pixel coordinates, 0, 0.
This is not an image laid over, is this laid over an actual map, or is it?
It's a map.
Oh, okay.
And you use an image as a map, and you have these pixel coordinates. So then you want to.
The image is your map layer.
Yeah, there's no terrain map or something.
Isn't that how they originally did like some ternary diagrams? People do that.
Yeah,
like
something like that. Yeah, and then you can just put the parameters in. You basically calibrate your data with your image, and then you'll see the data points.
That's a smart way to do that.
Yeah, I think that's actually the way I did one of the gun barrel implementations. Like we had like a template, to put behind it, and then like just choosing like, this is where, like, if this is in this zone, then it goes at this XY coordinate, and like then spreading them out across the.
Should have just put it in a PowerPoint.
Well, that's how they were building it out. But that gun barrel project, it was actually like a planning project before well was even created in Aries, but and they were actually doing some stuff in Excel and putting in like a first and last take points on all these things, and so they could move them around. And then I actually had our data function that was drawing the lines on the map using the SF. But then, like, once they got it where they wanted it, it also created the gun barrel for them, and then they would just grab that and put that into their proposal, for their.
Whenever we go to like an oil and gas customers, we ask them, "How do you do the gun barrel?" Hey, we wrote our own template, and so that's like
and they all do the exact same thing.
Yeah, so that's kind of like we're kind of like pushing. Hey, let's release the gun barrel mod.
And we have a lot of we have a big responsibility, because we see what our customers are doing.
Right.
But they don't know what their competitors are doing.
Yep.
So we can just create something that will benefit everyone, of course, with their approval.
Yeah, for sure.
No, that's how. I think that's exactly how it should work. Or this. It never ceases to amaze me how quick these go.
Do real
Jump
quick
into the speed round. We'll do a couple real fast. Favorite. Let's do favorite book or podcast that you either recently listened to or just really like in general? They can be energy, data, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, for sure. I listen to you guys' podcast.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And then you need to bring the Tech Night back to Houston soon.
Early next year, right?
We take the fall into fall and winter months off, mostly because a lot of people travel, they're hunting, there's just holidays, all of that stuff. And so
yeah. I've been reading recently a book called Designing Machine Learning Systems.
Okay.
I think it was by Hoyon or something. It's a very famous book.
Okay.
It basically takes you through the steps of designing machine learning systems on like an enterprise scale, and what like all these precautions that you need to take, and it's kind of like it doesn't have like code,
right?
Have numbers, like just like the concepts and stuff. Yeah. And there was another book called I think the data science, like from a business perspective.
Okay.
And it basically focuses on why do you need to kind of like hold on the coding first before you start your machine learning project. It's like, it's basically tells you the coding is a very small part of the whole problem. It's not like you don't need to like jump right into the notebooks.
Kind of designing the hypothesis
exactly.
and what you're going to test and what the outcomes, desire are and everything.
You need to kind of like understand first what kind of answer you're looking for, and then maybe if you can
work backwards,
quantify like the return
and the business impact and the effort it's going to take to get there. I mean, because at the end of the day, everything comes down to money. I mean, with enough money, we could figure this problem out. But was it worth it? And
so the two things
you've got one.
For me, well, it's not oil and gas related. I have two favorite podcasts. One is the Exorcist Files.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know yet. And the other one is TED Talk Daily. I like the TED Talk Daily. And favorite book is Now You See It. It's about that's a great
book. Yeah.
Nice. Favorite open source library?
Everyone loves this question.
Well, some people either don't code or don't use them at all, or other people are like, this is so overwhelming, I love them all.
Yeah, it's like picking your favorite child.
I can mention like one library per task or like per area. So MLflow, love working with that. And then there's a new open source platform called Mage.
Yes, yeah.
That one's really cool.
It's like a data engineering kind of.
Yeah, it's like a pipeline.
Similar to Airflow or Dagster or something like that. I've heard very good things about it.
How do you spell it?
Mage.
Mage. It's very new.
Is it something like, really Tommy cool. Dang or something like that? Is like developer. I always see him on LinkedIn and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard very good things about it. I think Rob Stover.
Nice. I'm gonna have to poke around in that.
Yeah.
For me, is the D3.js library to create visualizations. Yeah.
That's the foundation of all the modern visualization. Right, Plotly is built on that and everything.
And then another one that is probably built on top of that one is eCharts, because it's an open source library and it has tons of visualizations that you can customize with basically minimal effort. Yeah.
Because D3 is, you got to really get into the details on that. Yeah. So, and that's why it's super extensible.
Lot of control,
but
yeah.
All right. Last one, most importantly, favorite video or board game?
Okay, if it's Candyland.
Yeah, I mean, we played Bluey last week, so we don't have to get too...
I like to play Need for Speed with my son. So
yeah.
I would get...
No, that's perfect.
Yeah, so we love Need for Speed. Yeah.
We play... my son loves to hunt and he loves the rodeo. So we've been playing PBR on the Wii. It's just hilarious.
Yeah. I can imagine that looks like.
It's
exactly twirling a lasso or something.
No, you're like controlling the rider with the stick with a really shitty old gyroscope on the Wii, and it's just like he loves it. So we sit there and do it. But.
Nice.
For me is Pente. I don't know if it's a board game with beads or pebbles, and you have to make rows of 5. You make a row of 5, and then you win. It has to be straight. And there are other ways to win, but that's like an ancient game, and I've been playing that game with my wife when I met her 1994.
Yeah.
He was my friend back then, but we've been playing since then. So it's good,
awesome.
Good strategy.
Cool.
Yeah.
I know you said one more, but having both these guys here and they're in Houston. What's your favorite restaurant in the Houston area?
Oh, that's a good one.
I like the what was the one that we went to?
Capitol Grill.
Yeah, Capitol Grill. Yeah,
And there's
that's right above our office is right above Capitol Grill.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then there's a brisket place called Pinkerton's.
Oh, yeah, Pinkerton's very good.
Shout out to Grant Pinkerton. We cater Pinkertons at our events and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I need to come.
Grants are
Yeah.
great.
Make sure
Oh,
Atheer
that's
knows.
like
Yeah.
Yeah, Capitol Grill. I mean, I live in the Katy area, and I like 2 restaurants in that area.
Yeah.
One is Anthony's. It's in Simonton, and the other one is Pearl and Vine.
Which was the chef from Anthony, or one of the chefs, right, from Anthony's that opened up Pearl and Vine.
Oh, I didn't know
Fun
that.
fact.
Oh, okay.
Makes a lot of sense then, right?
Yeah, no, makes sense.
I'm in Old Katy as well. And we started going, when we first moved out there, we'd go to Anthony's and then Pearl and Vine open. And then somebody one of our friends or whatever, knew Anthony or knows Anthony and was like, oh yeah, he was one of the lead chefs or sous chefs at Anthony's. And it's funny because the menus also have a lot of similar, like I love their greens. They have really good collard greens, Anthony's does, and Pearl and Vine has a very similar recipe. But they also have a great Carajillo if anybody likes those. So
Yeah.
I love a Carajillo. I say it wrong because I can't roll my R's, but they're delicious. Well, guys, thanks so much. This flew by.
Glad we were able to
Thank
make
you
it
for
work.
having us.
Yeah.
This is,
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for inviting us.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you guys on. Where can people find you? What's your YouTube channel? How do they get in touch if they
They can just look up Dr. Spotfire on YouTube. Yeah.
and you guys are on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn,
Stuff,
And we are
Yeah, and everything related is for Spotfire is community.spotfire.com or just spotfire.com, and there are tons of videos for learning, asking questions, engaging. Yeah,
Awesome, guys. Appreciate it, Bobby. Thanks for being back. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Glad you've
Made the trek.
I'm glad you've transitioned. On that note, guys, thanks for everything. If you like what we're doing, please give us a like. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll see y'all next time. Thanks.